So I want to welcome you to day 3 of the Diabetic Success Holiday Challenge. I am so glad that you're here and you're joining me as we go a little bit deeper today into the things that are going to help us be really successful as we go through the upcoming holidays. Yesterday's homework involved watching a video. Were you able to watch either one of the videos that we had put up in the Facebook group? If you have, just go ahead and wave your hand at me. Okay, good, good. And if you had any questions, especially about the second one where it talks about ketogenic diets, I want you to make any notes that you might have had about that. And we're going to cover that in the question and answer period at the end of this presentation. I also hope you've had a chance to go through your assessments and fill them out. And we will take some time at the end of our presentation today and maybe also tomorrow to go over what your results were and what your priorities were based on that. If you haven't had a chance to fill it out yet, please do that today because we want to be able to help you customize your plan based on your own information. So if it's not done today, we will work with you tomorrow on that. And then the other assignment was to go ahead and start writing down some goals for yourself for how you want to get through the holidays successfully. Like, what would it look like to you to be successful through this holiday period? Do you have target numbers where you want to keep your blood sugar? Or do you have specific ideas about things you want to make sure that you stick with through the holidays that might be harder or might be more challenging? I want that to be those goals that you're writing down. And we'll also take a look at those at the end of today. So if you got them handy, go get them, bring them up so that we can talk about those things at the end today. So this was the sheet that you were to fill out. So what we're going to be looking at today is if you had any questions or anything about either the yellow column, your results, or your score in the pink column. And so I know that some of you are watching this on replay. If you have those questions, you can go ahead and put them in the comments under the replay in the group, and I will address them there as well. So make sure you have some written goals. It doesn't mean they're set in concrete, and you might not refine them as we keep going through this challenge this week, but I want you to get started with some goal setting. So let's go ahead and get into the meat of our topic for today. That's going to be, I think, really helpful to you as you think about how you're going to go through and face this holiday season. We are going through the 3 steps of GPS for your journey to health through the holidays. And so getting the baseline, we should be pretty much done with getting that objective data together as you filled out your assessment. The next part, picking a destination, is what we're doing with the writing of your goals. And you may think of new goals or a different way you want to phrase your goals as we talk about some of the components that go into managing our diabetes well. And then today we're also going to start talking about setting up a plan. What are things we're going to actually do so that we can meet our goals? So I hope that that's helpful. I want to start by looking at the diabetes management matrix. This is a framework that helps us to look at how are we managing our diabetes. Anybody that's engaged in managing their diabetes is going to be somewhere in this matrix. And so I'm going to kind of break this down and we're going to explain it, add pieces to it as we go through it to help you understand where are you now and where would you like to be in terms of managing your prediabetes or your diabetes. Now, this matrix has 2 axes. Those are the gray lines that go up and down and crosswise. The up and down line represents the therapies that you're using to manage your diabetes. So some people are managing it with 100% lifestyle. That's at the top, as you see here. Others manage it 100% with pharmacology, and you see that at the bottom. That would be just taking your medicines. That's all you do is take your medicines. Most people are somewhere in between those 2 extremes, where they're combining, for example, a diabetic diet with their medications, Or if they're in pre-diabetes, a lot of doctors are giving you time to say, let's see if we can manage this with 100% lifestyle, and we'll wait on the medications. So your care provider may have started you different places. You may be currently at different places along that vertical gray axis, because that vertical gray axis is kind of a continuum. For example, if you kind of look at the middle of that vertical line, that would be where maybe 50% of your control comes from your medications and about 50% of your control comes from lifestyle choices. When we talk about lifestyle, we're talking about things like diet, exercise, stress management. Those are probably three of the really, really important areas that have to be managed in lifestyle to help control blood sugars. So that's what the vertical line represents, how you manage. So the vertical axis here represents the therapies, the interventions that we use to manage our diabetes. Now let's look at the horizontal line, which is blood sugar control. Now there's also different ways to manage that. I want to show you the two extremes here are having high blood sugars on the left or normal blood sugars on the right. And as we move into this, and we see that those two gray lines divide our big square into four smaller squares. Each of these squares represents where people might be. And you might be in the middle of a square or on the corner of a square, it doesn't matter. But if we look at what therapies you're using and where that intersects with how your blood sugar is being controlled, that helps to tell you which square you're in. So let's break that down. In the lower left, in the dark pink corner, those are people who are on medications, but are not controlling their blood sugars. Like their blood sugars are still running abnormally high. So you'll see that that's kind of in the left half of the blood sugar control axis and in the bottom half of the therapy used axis, which is the 100% pharmacology. So they're medicated, but they're not controlled. If you're in this square, you will be having lots of complications and lots of health issues related to those uncontrolled blood sugars. That is not a square you want to be in. If we go to the other bottom square, that's a little bit lighter pink, you'll see that that's the square where you're using medications and managing your blood sugars. So when you look at this horizontal line, you're running towards normal, like your blood sugar numbers are staying pretty good. They might be completely normal or they might be just kind of close to normal. What we sometimes people call your diabetic goals. A lot of doctors tell their clients that if you're a diabetic, these are good numbers for you. They're not actually normal blood sugars, but they're saying, you know, this is our goal for you in terms of numbers. So that's kind of over in that half. So you're using medications, your sugars are managed, and you're probably not doing very much with lifestyle. You might be doing a little bit of diet or whatever. Now, if we move up to the top left corner, a little bit lighter pink, that is where people are using lifestyle and maybe trying to just manage with lifestyle, but their blood sugars are still not controlled. There are many diabetics who maybe haven't learned how to really implement lifestyle properly or aren't committed to the level of lifestyle implementation that they need to control their blood sugars. And so, but they don't want to take medications, or maybe they're just really bad about using their medications. It could be either one. But in any case, they are taking little or no medication and their blood sugars are still running high. In that corner, you are also going to suffer from a lot of complications related to your diabetes. And actually, this lower right corner, medicated and sugars managed, like you're just taking as much insulin as you need to keep your sugars in check. Both of these these lighter pink squares, the medicated and sugars managed and the lifestyle alone not enough, both of those squares will experience complications. Now, there won't be as many complications as if you were, for example, not controlling your sugars at all. but you're still going to be dealing with complications in these diagonally opposed lifestyle alone not enough or medicated sugars managed squares. If you go into the top right square, that's the square where you're actually working towards disease reversal, where you're looking at managing your blood sugar so they stay normal, and you want to do it through lifestyle choices, and you're able to do it without using medications. Now, most type 2 diabetics, using the proper strategies and tools, can move into this top right corner, no matter where they happen to be right now. There are a few that will not be able to completely eliminate medications, but can largely eliminate medications, keep their blood sugars normal, and thus really minimize their complications. With diabetes, our big goal is managing complications because those are the things that kill you. It's the losing your eyesight, it's the kidney failure, it's the losing limbs or experiencing painful neuropathy. Those are all complications of blood sugars that are chronically not within the normal range. So I want you to each think about where you might currently be in this matrix. And my goal for you, and you can decide whether you want to make it a goal for yourself or not, but my goal for you is that as you walk through the holidays, that you will move, not just stay where you are, which for some people might be a legitimate goal. Just like, I don't want to get any worse than I am right now, and then we'll work on getting better in the new year. But my goal would be that you would actually be able to perhaps move towards this light pink disease reversal square, even going through the holidays. So, you can kind of think about how does that work for you? Is that something that would be a goal for you or not? But I want to give you the tools that will enable you to move in that direction. For example, if you're in the dark pink, uncontrolled, medicated square, I want you to be able to move towards better control. As you do that, you are moving towards the disease reversal quadrant. If you're in the medicated and sugars managed, maybe you can go towards cutting back on your medications. Now, I want to make it really clear that I will not be involved in helping you adjust your medication dosages if you're on medications. That's something you have to do with your care provider. I will be giving you tools and showing you things that you can do that can help to control your sugars more effectively. But if you start to implement any of the things we're talking about, I need you to get on the phone with your doctor's office today. Tell them what you're changing about the way you're managing your sugars and ask them for guidance in terms of your medication. I will recommend, because this doesn't involve your medications, but I will recommend checking your blood sugar before every dose of medication and checking your blood sugars at least every morning in a fasting state if you are making any of the changes we are talking about. A lot of the changes we're going to be talking about for the next few days can actually drop your blood sugars quite quickly. And so you could be at risk of dangerously low blood sugars if you're not adjusting any medications you're on. If you're not on medications, that won't be an issue for you. But if you're taking oral medications or insulin, any of the things we're talking about that you start to implement, any changes in what you're eating, any changes in your exercise, any changes in your stress management, that can decrease your blood sugar levels. So you need to be watching those levels yourself, and you need to be working closely with your care provider to make sure they're helping you adjust dosages so you don't go into low blood sugar. Because if you make changes that lower your blood sugar and you still keep taking the same amount of medication, you can get hypoglycemic, and that can be very dangerous. Okay. So that's really important, is that I need you working with your care provider as you implement these changes. You should be able to call into the office and at least talk to the nurse, even if you can't talk to your doctor directly, and get some guidance. Maybe they will put you, if you have insulin, they might give you a sliding scale where you check your blood sugars and then you take insulin to cover whatever your blood sugar is, rather than just taking a certain amount irrespective of what your blood sugars are doing. If you're on oral medications, they might suggest you cut back on them, or decrease the dose. But that is something you have to work out with your care provider. So I want to give you that right up front because the things that we're talking about are actually very powerful. And most diabetics are going to see a real drop in blood sugars as they start implementing. And the more things they implement, the bigger the drop they're going to see. And that needs to be managed with your care provider. So I hope that's really clear. I don't want anybody going into hypoglycemia as we go through starting to do some things that can actually help you with your diabetes. As you lower your blood sugars, if you're on medications, it allows you to cut back on medications. And many people can, over time, as they implement tools and strategies, some of which we'll be sharing this week, will, if they continue with that and they continue learning the other things they can do to impact their blood sugars positively, can get off medications. So I just want everybody to know that that's a fact. That is something that some doctors don't even tell their patients. I see so many people telling me, my doctor said that this disease is forever and that I will always be a diabetic and that there is no such thing as reversing. Now, a lot of doctors will say there's no cure. And I'm not going to argue with that. What I'm going to say is that diabetes is a condition, the diagnosis of which is based on a criteria of blood sugars. If those blood sugars are within completely normal limits without medications, most practitioners will have to say, yes, it's been reversed. Some practitioners use the terminology, it's in remission. The fact of the matter is that if you disregard the lifestyle, positive lifestyle changes that can maintain you in normal blood sugars, you start going back to eating the way you were before, not exercising, things like that, absolutely your blood sugars can start getting abnormal again. So no, it's not like you can reverse it and then just forget about it. You will always want to maintain a healthy lifestyle. But the good news is that a healthy lifestyle that reverses diabetes is actually very sustainable. It involves very tasty food. It does not involve deprivation or hunger. And it is absolutely something you can live with for the rest of your life. And it can help you to feel better, have more energy, avoid progression of heart disease, all kinds of benefits to adopting a lifestyle that supports good metabolism. So I hope that's clear. If you have any questions, write them down, drop them in the chat. We will be addressing those questions at the end. One more thing I want you to look at with this matrix is that as you go from lower left to upper right, you are going from treating signs and symptoms to treating root causes. And my approach with diabetes education is always to help you understand and treat root causes. That is the only way you can actually move into that disease reversal quadrant. So much of Western medicine focuses on treating signs and symptoms and does very little to help you treat root causes. And so you can see that in that lower dark pink square, you're basically just treating signs and symptoms, being high blood sugars. So you're doing something with medicine that brings those numbers down. That's just treating the symptom. High blood sugars is not the disease. It is not the root cause of your problems. There's something else that's causing the high blood sugars. As we address those things, then when we bring blood sugars down by addressing root causes, you're actually moving in the direction of disease reversal. I hope that part's clear. On the other hand, you also see from the lower right corner to the upper left corner is another kind of dotted line, and that's taking you from more medications at the lower end to fewer medications at the upper end. And so what I have seen in my experience is that you can move upwards on both of those dotted lines together. You don't have to choose one or the other. You can actually do both. If you're doing both, then you can end up in the disease reversal quadrant. All right. So I hope that part's clear. So that's how I like people to understand ways to manage diabetes. You can manage diabetes in all four of these squares, but some are more effective than others, and some will have more complications than others. And you will feel best in the upper right square. So I believe that most diabetics understanding this will want to move in the direction of the upper right square. The closer you can get to that, the better you're going to feel, the less medications you need, and the better your blood sugars are. Okay, so let's start talking about some tools and strategies that can be very important in diabetes management and moving you into that top right square. The first one I want to talk about is sleep. Sleep often goes missing for the holidays. There are many things that come together to help us lose sleep. Sometimes it's like preparations for family gatherings. I know this year is not going to be the same as every year in terms of family gatherings, but there are still things that can cause us to lose sleep. Maybe it's, getting the gifts and getting them all packaged and mailed to all the family that we're not going to be seeing face to face. There are many things that can interfere with our sleep over the holidays. But sleep is extremely important for our body's metabolism. Lack of sleep all by itself can raise your blood sugars. The reason is that lack of sleep is actually a stressor for your body. When your body is stressed, your cortisol and other stress hormone levels go up. When stress hormone levels go up, guess what else goes up? Insulin. And as insulin levels rise, it can make insulin resistance worse. And so it actually works less effectively. Getting adequate sleep is one of the tools to help decrease insulin resistance. We talked about insulin resistance yesterday. That's when the little locks on your cells that are supposed to open with insulin to let the sugar in get sticky and they don't work properly. That's insulin resistance. So as you are sleep deprived, insulin resistance goes up. It makes those locks stickier. And part of that is because of the action of stress hormones and their effect in your body. So get adequate sleep. Now, people go, well, how much sleep do I need? Well, there's really good research that shows that people need adults, I should say, need between 7 and 8 hours of sleep a night. We find that if you drop below 7, your stress hormone levels go up. Even people who say, oh, I only need 6 hours a night, I feel fine on 6 hours a night, but their bodies are not doing well. They are not working optimally in their mental functions. They are not working optimally in terms of taking care of their metabolism. And that will eventually catch up with them. They may not have any signs or symptoms or any diseases right now, but you will not have the same long-term life force if you use it up by sleep deprivation early on in life. So less than 7 hours a night is very much linked to worsening of chronic illnesses and increasing your risk for developing things like prediabetes and diabetes. Especially type 2 diabetes. And I do want to clarify that when we're talking about diabetes in the seminar, we are mostly talking about type 2 diabetes. But you know that diabetes management matrix we looked at? It applies to type 1 diabetics too. The only caveat being that a type 1 diabetic will probably not be able to eliminate their insulin. We are seeing studies where over time, a very healthy lifestyle can actually promote the regeneration of those pancreas cells that make insulin and have been destroyed in type 1. So there's actually even hope for new cell formation that starts making insulin when we get on and stay on a very good lifestyle. So I don't want to discourage anyone that might be watching this that is a type 1 diabetic. Just because I'm addressing a lot of type 2 diabetic issues in terms of the physiology, all of the strategies and tools can help type 1 diabetics to manage their diabetes better. And the better your type 1 diabetes is managed, the fewer complications you have. So this is good for everybody. On the other hand, we go back to sleep. Dropping below 7 is not good. But we do find also that people that are sleeping 9 or 10 hours or more a day, that's also associated with negative health outcomes. The reason is that most people, if they're chronically sleeping 9, 10, or more hours a day are probably dealing with some other health issue. One of the most frequent ones would be depression. And depression is very hard on your immune system. It is stressful for the body. Your stress hormone levels often can be higher than they should be. And something needs to be looked at, like why are we needing that much sleep? Because that's not normal for most adults to need 9 or 10 hours a night on a continuous basis. Now, obviously, if you went short of sleep one night and you're trying to catch up the next, sure, you might put in 9 or 10 hours. But if that's a regular pattern, that's not a good pattern, and you also want to address what's going on there. So let's make sure we're getting our sleep. One other thing I want to say about sleep is the importance of timing with sleep. Our bodies are actually designed to work with light dark cycles. Our sleep is most productive, highest quality, and provides the best restoration of our body when we sleep during the dark part of the night and we sleep in total darkness. So that's really important for good quality sleep. And we find that sleeping earlier in the night is better for us than later. In other words, every hour of sleep before midnight is worth about 2 hours afterwards, which means that most of us need to get to bed by 9 or 10 o'clock at night to really get the best benefit, excuse me, to get the best benefit from our night of sleep. So getting to bed early and getting up early if we need the time is better for us. For example, if you get 8 hours of sleep and you're going to bed at, say, midnight and you get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, your body did not get the same amount of benefit and restoration as if you had gone to bed at 9 o'clock and gotten up at 5. Both of those are 8-hour nights, but the earlier night will give you much more benefit for the hours that you spend in bed. So it's like more bang for the buck, right? And so it'll make the other 16 hours of your day more productive when you get good quality sleep and at the right time and in the dark. The darkness is important for some of the hormones that your body makes during the night and during sleep, and not having that darkness impedes the production of some very important neurotransmitters, brain chemicals, things that help you to feel good, to think clearly, and to have energy. So let's not forget about sleep. And that goes hand in hand with the second strategy we want to talk about, which is stress, often the bane of the holidays. As the holidays roll around, there are many things that can contribute to stress besides lack of sleep, which we've already discussed. Our bodies are stressed and have more trouble with metabolic functions like maintaining blood sugars if we are experiencing negative emotions. There are many things that can trigger negative emotions over the holidays. We find that many times holidays, for example, are when you feel the grief of loss most keenly. Maybe you've lost a spouse or a family member, somebody that you used to celebrate the holidays with and made it so meaningful. Every holiday that rolls around, that kind of comes back and can be a trigger for grief or other negative emotions, feelings of isolation, loneliness, or loss. Another factor is that holidays often involve closer relationships with family that we might not see or relate with as much in other parts of the year. None of us come from a totally perfect family, which means that whenever we have to spend extra time with family, it can be a source of stress. Even if it's something we like doing, something we look forward to doing, it's often not stress-free. Human dynamics, the relationships that we have with other people, are probably a major cause of stress in our lives. And we often don't have a lot of control over some of those. Like we have no control over the way other people treat us or the way other people relate to us. That isn't something we can control, but it can cause us a lot of stress. And so one of the first steps to dealing with stress is looking at what's causing it. Like, what is it that makes me feel stressed? Take some time. If you find your stomach's kind of in knots, or you've been clenching your fist without realizing it, or you're starting to get a headache, stop and think about what might be causing this feeling? What just happened? Was I just in a situation that had some conflict, or some anger was brought up, or feelings of loneliness or grief? Why am I feeling like this? And try to identify the cause. Then we're going to do the third thing on this list here, which is focus on what you can control. The things you can't control, what other people do, what other people say, how other people behave, those are not things you can control. So what you want to focus on are the things you can control. And here are some of the things you can control. First thing on our list, plan ahead. Not all of us are natural planners. Some people plan their whole lives and every detail of their lives, and that's for them part of who they are. Some of us are not like that. But the fact is that the planning ahead enables us to think about challenges or obstacles or sticky situations that might be coming up. And if we can think about how we're going to get through that ahead of time, then we're kind of like pre-armed for the situation. And we have a much higher chance of getting through that situation with a minimal amount of stress. It might not be stress-free, but it might be a lot less stressful if we've already made a plan of how we're going to deal with it. So planning ahead. If we're going to have a party or a get together, or we're going to have a meal, plan ahead so that you're not stressed as the occasion arrives because you're running around at the last minute trying to find, oh, those napkins that match the plates, or, that particular ingredient for the recipe that I don't have in my cupboard and I've got to get that cooked right now because the company will be here in an hour. All of those are stresses that you have control over by pre-planning. And I think in the holidays, that can be one of the biggest things you can do to relieve your personal stress is to plan ahead. Figure out, when are the days that I'm going to be really busy? What do I need to do to be ready for this particular occasion? Are there things I can do ahead so that I have less that I have to do right on the day of the occasion? Can I make things ahead and freeze them? Can I get the house cleaning done the week before? Can I, just think about how are ways that I can start preparing right now for the holidays that are coming up. For example, I'm already starting to think about what our menu is going to be for Thanksgiving. As I think about that, then I can also think, okay, what do I want to make sure I have on hand? So that I don't have to do like one giant 4-hour shopping spree the day before the holiday to get all my ingredients that I need for the dishes I'm going to prepare. I can start kind of collecting those things now. I can put my menu together now. I can decide what is it I want to ask somebody else to contribute or to bring, so I can get them the recipe in time for them to do their planning. Those are just all things that can help us to be more efficient, to have more time on our hands, and be less stressed. The second one I believe is also important, and that's having realistic expectations. Like if you're really struggling with energy levels, are you really, in a position where you want to host 25 people and do all the food yourself or all the decorations? Have 10 people staying in your home for a weekend. Have realistic expectations. Think about what is your own energy levels. What are you able to do? Are there things that other people could help you with? Be willing to delegate appropriately to people that are willing to help. Maybe some things need to be trimmed. Do we really need to have 10 gifts per person in the family? Would a gift exchange be better this year? There's just a lot of things to think about and say, am I being realistic? Maybe I'd love to throw this, really big celebration, or just really do like all the lights on my house and my lawn and my, and have everything. So it's like the best decorated house in the neighborhood. But is that realistic for you? Is that the best use of your time and energy? I don't know about you, but something that has a really high priority for me are relationships. And for me, the holidays focus should be on the relationships, not on the stuff. And having the time and energy to put into those relationships versus, the time and energy that sometimes go into external decorations, things that make us look good in the neighborhood, things that are keeping up with the Joneses, sorts of things. Sometimes those aren't the things that really help to build rich relationships. Doing things together that build, make memories. Those are things that build relationships, and they don't have to cost a lot of money. They don't have to be hard to do, but they usually take planning. So we're right back to that first one. Let's plan how to really make these holidays the most productive for us and help us really build relationships with the people that we care about. Even if we can't get together, maybe you want to think about getting everybody on Zoom together from your family. You can have Zoom meetings with just your family. Something that my husband and I have done is we've got two boys and they're both married, as you know, and we haven't been able to see them for a while. So what we did one Saturday night was like we just all got on Zoom and we actually played games on Zoom. That is something you can do, and it was really fun, and everybody enjoyed it, and it was like the next best thing to being all together. So even if you can't get together, there are things you can do. In fact, you can even Google Zoom games, and you will find hundreds of games that can be played online. I don't recommend all the ones that will come up when you do that search, but there's some really nice games that you can do too. Sometimes it means that everybody in the group just downloads a simple app or a simple software that allows them to see a screen that's then shared with everybody. There can be, you don't even have to do that. There are other kinds of games that you can play that don't require that at all. But some of the word games are really fun that you can do in a shared manner, like you can do Scrabble that has multiple players in multiple places. There's just a lot of things that can still be done. We just kind of have to get creative sometimes. And then back to the last thing on our list is focusing on what you can control. And I think that is very key for us, not just for the holidays, but for life. It really isn't worth spending a lot of time and energy on things we can't control. And I say that, given our current social climate, as I'm recording this today is election day. You know what that means? It means tomorrow, a lot of people aren't going to be happy. And I think that this is a really good example of how we can plan ahead, have realistic expectations, and focus on what we can control. Because, whatever happens, happens. If you have done what you can to, exercise your civic responsibility and vote, the outcome isn't something that you as an individual have control over. So I really would encourage you to not get caught up in a big emotional backlash based on whatever happens today, tomorrow, or in the weeks to come. The things that we can't control are not where we need to focus our time and energy. There are so many things that are important for us to make choices about and to control. When it comes to managing our diabetes, that is something we can do. And you know what? It doesn't matter who's in the White House. It doesn't matter what court cases are going on. It really doesn't matter to me and how I manage my health. And so I want to put my energy and my focus in the areas that I can control. And that's going to be the most productive, not just for me, but my family, my community, and all the spheres of influence in which I operate. Me being able to bring calm, peace, and tranquility into these relationships with many other people that might be struggling a lot. That enables me to contribute something. It enables me to bring something that can be a blessing to other people in my life as I focus on what I can control. I can control how I respond to situations. I cannot usually control the situation itself. So let's look at how are we responding and what choices can we make about how we respond in stressful situations. Because we always have control over our response. That may be the only thing we can control in a stressful situation, but we can control that. And it all starts right here in how we think about what's happening to us, how we frame what is going on. And so that's something I really want us to keep in mind in terms of managing stress. Obviously, there's many other things I could say about stress management, but these are some of the key things that I think can really help you go through the weeks ahead. And right along with that, as a Christian health coach, I have to admit, I feel like there's another tool in my toolbox as a Christian that I want you to be aware of. Whether you're a Christian or not, I want you to know that you can trust the things you can't control to the one who loves you most. And I believe that that's God. I believe in a loving God that really cares about me, my life, and what's going on with me. And He is one who has power over things I have no control over. And because He loves and cares for me, I can choose to trust Him. When I choose to trust Him, I can let go of the anxiety, the angst, and all those negative emotions that can come up when I'm dealing with stress. And one of the ways that I do that is to claim promises. You know, the Bible is full of promises that can help us through many difficult situations. In fact, I believe there's a promise for every difficult situations. And I want to share just a couple of those with you, ones that have meant a lot to me and that I have found helpful. One of those is in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6. And this is from the English Standard Version. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your paths. So, you know, as we trust in God and lean on Him instead of just our internal resources, just who we happen to be, just the skills we happen to bring to the table, He can make our paths straight. That means that He can help to smooth out the places that are difficult in our lives, the rough places that we might be dealing with. Another really great promise is Isaiah 26:3. It says, You keep him in perfect peace. That's speaking of God. You keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. And here we see that promise that if we trust in God, He can give us perfect peace. And that can be peace in the middle of a storm brewing around us. And I love this verse because I've been in many situations that I have found very challenging. And claiming this promise has been such a comfort and such a help because I have seen how God can actually put that peace in my heart that enables me to face whatever I'm dealing with without getting all caught up in a storm of negative emotions, but having that inner peace. And that is something that I think people today are really looking for. We see less and less of that in the world around us. And so it becomes a felt need. More and more of us are seeing we need peace because there doesn't seem to be very much of it around. But this is a source of peace that we all have access to, and that is infinite. It doesn't run out. We can have this peace no matter what's going on. So I want to encourage you to think about how can you use some of these strategies that we've talked about as you make your plans for the upcoming holidays. I want you to make a plan. I want you to be thinking about how am I going to put sleep into that plan? How am I going to manage stress through this plan? And we're going to be sharing some more tools, some very powerful tools have to do with our food choices. And we're going to be talking about that some more tomorrow. Cindy, who is a registered dietitian, will be with us, and she's going to be sharing with us some great suggestions, some great keys to how we can use nutritional tools and strategies to help us as we go through the holidays. So don't miss tomorrow. Try to be here live if you can be at all. I'll be really looking forward to seeing each one of your smiling faces. As we make that plan, the next step is to identify potential obstacles. So you have your goals now and you're starting to work out some plans based on those goals. I want you to sit down and spend some time thinking about potential obstacles. What might come up that could get in the way of carrying out your plan? Because the more of those things we can think of ahead, then we can really plan specific strategies to deal with those specific obstacles. And I'd like you to bring your list of potential obstacles tomorrow because I'd like us to discuss them. We might find that a lot of us have similar obstacles and we might have different ideas about how we can face those obstacles and not let them stop us from getting to our goal. I just want to encourage you to stick with this because yes, you can do it. These are a matter of choices and decisions. Those are things that you do have control over. And so as we work together, I want you to be encouraged and I want you to know, yes, this is something that is really doable. Now it's time for questions. So I'm going to allow you to unmute and we're going to be um, taking your questions. So I will also check my chat and I'll probably stop my share at this point. So let me do that. You can see me and now we can talk about any of the questions that you might have. So let me get everybody unmuted. You just click on any button that you see on your screen that says unmute. There you go. You're unmuted. So any questions?
This is Denise. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Denise. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I didn't know if I should have my earphones in or not. Is that good to have them in?
It is good. It actually helps the sound to be better.
Okay. Okay. Well, I have a question about, I'm glad to be in the meeting and it's just target on with what I need to know and be of help to me. But I did want to know too about diabetes, if it is partly hereditary or not. I don't even know if I have it, but my mother does. She's probably had it for 20 years and she's 91 years old.
Wow.
And she's controlling it with she does take one pill and she does try to watch her diet.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I have a younger brother that also has diabetes, and he takes medication, but he doesn't try to control it with diet at all, not whatsoever. So I just wonder if I have a genetic tendency to it or not. I haven't checked my blood sugars. I haven't done any of that, but I've noticed some changes in my health with, I'm 68 years old now.
Okay.
And with my health, I've noticed that my blood pressure is running a little high when I check it. And right now it's really high because I'm in a lot of pain with a fractured rib. And they say that it can be higher when you're in pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is my waist circumference is growing in that area. And I'm like, I never had that problem before. I'm not real heavy, but there's got to be some of that. What kind of fat was it that you called it?
Visceral fat is like around your abdominal organs.
Yeah, because I just can't seem to get my belly down. And I'm like, I've got those two things. So I'm thinking maybe I should start checking my blood pressure. You said something about having a problem with a metabolic something. What did you call that?
Metabolic syndrome?
Yeah. And is that something you get before diabetes or is it, I don't understand that.
Okay, those are really great questions, Denise. I'm glad you brought them up. So let me answer the first one first. Is diabetes hereditary? Now, diabetes can be hereditary, and let me explain how that works. For example, in my family, that's definitely the case. Both of my maternal grandparents had type 2 diabetes. Of their 8 children, 3 or 4 of them have diabetes. My mother is not one of them, but I have a sibling with diabetes. And so you definitely see that there is a hereditary tendency. That hereditary tendency is carried in your genes. So you can inherit kind of, it's like a weakness, right? That weakness means that you are more likely to develop that than somebody that did not have any hereditary tendency to it. And often when we get older, we get under stress or we develop other illnesses, those weak areas show themselves. So the other thing I want to say about that, though, is that genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. That means that just because you inherited a tendency does not mean that you have to be diabetic. The fact that I have a sibling that's diabetic and my mother is not, but she has siblings that are, shows that she has the tendency to it, but she has never developed diabetes. It's interesting to me that she's also been very careful about her lifestyle for decades. Ever since I was a kid, she has been on a healthy lifestyle program. She's been vegetarian. She's avoided animal products. She exercises a lot. She's been doing all of these really good things for her health and has avoided, and she is not overweight, and she has avoided developing diabetes completely. Now, her siblings that have gotten the diabetes, um, almost all of them were overweight, and most of them either had been under extended chronic stress for quite a few years before developing the diabetes, or had other risk factors that weren't being addressed. Maybe their diet wasn't quite as healthy as my mom's. I mean, there were other things. So it's really clear to me from my personal experience, as well as working with dozens and dozens of diabetics, that your lifestyle choices are the biggest factor in your development and advancement of the disease. So I definitely would say to you that you need to be monitoring your metabolism. I would really recommend that you get a hemoglobin A1C if you don't have one in the last 3 months. And you can check with your doctor's office to see what it was. And that's one of the things that does go in your spreadsheet. So you'll be able to see what your range is that you're looking for. And if that is completely normal, then I would make sure I got a fasting insulin with the 4-hour glucose tolerance test, where you got the insulins every time you get the glucose tested, because that would be like the most accurate to see what your pancreas is doing right now. And that'll pick up if your pancreas is having to work harder than normal right now. And if that's a fact, then you definitely are going to want to address that before it develops into prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. So I think it's really, really smart that you're addressing that now. Um, and all of the things that we're talking about for diabetics are equally applicable to preventing diabetes. I mean, it's one of the beautiful things about a lifestyle approach to disease, where the things that help to reverse diabetes or prediabetes are the same things that help to prevent it from developing in the first place. So you're in a good place. And as we talk about these things, just you'll want to really inform yourself, because you want to prevent it for yourself if you haven't yet developed it. If you've developed it and it's early, you have a really good chance of completely reversing it. So you do want to get this baseline assessment, because that's really important to know what your starting point is, and then work from there. Um, the second thing that you brought up, oh, and one more thing I wanted to say about lifestyle is that they actually have really good studies now showing that our lifestyle choices, like how we choose to sleep and eat and deal with stress, can directly turn genes on for disease. So, like, you can inherit a gene for diabetes, but if your lifestyle doesn't trigger the turning on of that gene, you'll never develop the disease. So that's a lot. That's something that a lot of people don't realize, is that we have a lot of control over gene expression, and we control that through lifestyle choices. And then you also ask, you were talking about different ways of managing it, and I think you described, how your mother's managing it with a kind of a combination of medications and diet. You have a sibling that is not really managing it except for medications. Part of that is that many doctors don't even have the information to educate their patients on these things, because this is not something that's taught in medical school. A lot of people assume that doctors know like everything about your body because they're doctors. But for example, medical schools have almost no training in nutrition for doctors. Even medical schools that have a real emphasis in nutrition, like Cornell is known for its nutrition department and all of its research in nutrition. But its medical school, I think, has something like 15 hours of nutritional education in the whole 4 years of medical school. That's not enough for doctors to be equipped to educate their patients on lifestyle changes and the impact of those changes. And many doctors are just not up on the research of those things because it's not on their radar. Now, working with doctors that have taken specialties in lifestyle medicine, functional medicine, or integrative medicine, they're usually more open to lifestyle interventions and tend to know a little bit more about it. But that doesn't mean that they really, that's their area of real expertise when it comes to managing diabetes with just lifestyle. That's not necessarily where they're at. I've also found, just kind of incidentally, that osteopathic doctors, DOs instead of MDs, they're also often much more open to using lifestyle approaches, and they tend to understand that your lifestyle choices can have this huge impact on health, more so than a lot of MDs. So that's just kind of like another thing. When, if you're like looking for a care provider, those are some things to look for. So I'm going to go ahead and let you unmute again, and let me know if you have any other questions or anything further that I can explain it. Did I answer everything you asked?
Yes, I think you did well, and um, e- I I did know quite a bit of that. I'd heard that before about um, that the lifestyle or genetics loads the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger. And
Yeah.
I've heard that, and I do believe that. And I've been quite careful with my diet, but then I mean, I've been vegan for years. I started becoming vegetarian when I was 20,
Hmm.
and but I was still eating eggs and cheese and dairy.
Hmm.
And so probably I'd say the last 10, 15 years I haven't had dairy or, anything like that. So I know I'm doing some things well, but I think stress is kind of one of the things that you said, because I've been under stress. I had to have a hip replacement and it didn't go real well. And I've
Oh.
been dealing with a lot of pain from that. And now I've fractured a rib. And in between that, I broke a shoulder. And so I've
Oh.
had a lot of pain
Yeah.
in the last couple of years.
Mhm.
And so I think that's when I noticed my weight going up around the middle. And
Mm.
so maybe it is somewhat stress related.
Yes,
I didn't know stress itself could do it.
it can, because when stress and stress hormones rise, one of the effects of higher insulin levels is the deposition of abdominal fat. So like abdominal fat is directly related to stress. And when it's a chronic, it's over time, that is very, very common. I mean, I found, and I think I started this story a couple days ago and didn't actually get to the finishing it. So let me do that now. And that was that I had been kind of watching my blood sugar, just because I knew I had this hereditary tendency. And about a year ago, actually more like a year and a half ago, um, my dad had a stroke. I ended up having to come out to work with my parents. There was a lot of sleep deprivation for some weeks. There was just a lot more stress. There was a lot more like care issues. I was having to do a lot of dealing with the healthcare system. And so I wasn't able to like get all the exercise I usually get. I probably wasn't eating quite as well as I had been eating before. And I saw my blood sugars going up. And I actually like got fasting blood sugar that was in the diabetic range. And I'm like, oh, I am not doing this. And so I got really serious and I applied some specific nutritional interventions for blood sugar control, some of what we'll be talking about here, even though we can't go into that much depth on it, but we will be talking about some of those nutritional things in the next couple of days. And I found that I was able to normalize my blood sugars by doing some of those things really intentionally. Even though, yes, I've been plant based for a number of years, so being plant based is good. But there's actually, for diabetics, there's some things we have to watch out for in terms of our choices. So we will talk more about that. And so,
Okay.
I found just for myself that stress was huge. And I also, I know a diabetic very well who can go from, they're insulin dependent, but they can go from perfectly normal blood sugars after having had their insulin, and then maybe get like a stressful phone call from work, and they've seen their blood sugar go right up to 400 without eating a single bite. And so that is,
Wow.
yeah, that's completely stress related blood sugar
Wow.
issues.
Wow.
And a lot of people don't realize how big of an impact that has. And that's why I think stress management is so key, because it's kind of like a hidden thing. It's like you can't like look at somebody's plate and say, how are they managing stress? It's like there's not like this outside indicator of that. It's like
Right.
it's kind of
Right.
internal in our minds, but we do have control over it. But we have to learn to become aware of what we're thinking and how our thoughts are affecting our stress levels, and what can we do to think in ways that help us to decrease stress. Things like trusting in God, things like claiming his promises, things
Yes.
like letting go of the things we can't control.
Right.
Those are all just vital for stress management, and that is key. I mean, you can be exercising, you can be eating right, you can even be on medications and not be able to maintain good blood sugars if you're not dealing with your stress well and you're in a stressful
Right.
situation.
Right.
Any other
Thank
questions?
you.
No,
Thank you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm really glad you asked those questions. I think they're important, and a lot of people can relate to those.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I didn't know stress was such a big factor, because I'm but even when you're not stressed, you're not as careful. I mean, when you are stressed, you're not as careful with your diet.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
mm,
I'll eat healthy food, but I'll tend to overeat,
mm.
you
Yeah,
know?
and that is, it's part of like a vicious cycle. And for a
Hmm.
lot of people with emotional eating, which can often be tied up with what got them into this mess in the first place, um, emotional eating is often very closely linked to stress, and you get more stress and you eat more. Others get more stress and just stop eating. I mean, there are different stress responses to eating, but both of those can throw you off your diabetes management plan. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
recognizing and then really dealing with that, for as long as it takes for you to get those strategies, those tools, or those habits in place, is really worth it.
Oh,
Because
yes, I believe it.
no doctor can do that for you.
No,
Only the
no.
great physician, as I like to say, is the only one.
Exactly.
He can really,
Exactly.
deal with our anxiety. And there are other techniques that you find out there, things like relaxation, and exercise actually physiologically decreases stress levels. So like
Hmm.
if you're dealing with high levels of stress hormones, exercise will actually have a very positive impact on it. That's not something we were talking
Hmm.
about today. So there are
Hmm.
other things, but I really think when we're looking at root causes, having somebody, a power outside of ourselves that's bigger than us, that we can trust in,
Absolutely.
is just nothing beats that.
No, that's right. That's right. Good.
Yeah. So I just want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Okay.
It's been great being together, and I will look forward
Thank
to
you.
seeing you tomorrow as we go
Okay.
into session number 4, and we'll have a Cindy here helping us, and we will have a great time, and we'll learn some more new things. So thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you.